Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Political Vigilante. My name is Graham Elwood. A very special guest, presidential candidate, Senator Mike Gravel. Senator, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's a pleasure to be on your program and articulate what's going on.
So let's get right into it. I was on the Jimmy Dore show about a week or two ago, and we watched your Rock in the Pond from 2008, which was just fantastic. It said so much.
It was a metaphor, incidentally, it was a metaphor for life that a lot of people didn't understand. You know, you focus on what you want to do with your life, then you do it. That's the rock and the water and the ripples that what you've done in life, and then you walk away to your demise. That is the metaphor.
Yeah, I mean, it was great. And so now you're running for president again in 2020, and you've been very outspoken against the military-industrial complex. You've spoken out. I believe it's just you and Tulsi are the only ones that have spoken out about Julian Assange being jailed. And so tell us why you're running. You're running as a Democrat. And
well, the running is a little bit of a euphemism. In point of fact, in '08, when I ran, it was at the suggestion of a friend of mine who was living in Mexico. And he pointed out that if I wanted to get what floats my boat, which is creating a legislature of the people, to get that out to the public, the best way to do it is to run as a presidential candidate. Well, I was in 7 debates, and most of the questions by the pundits all involved the war and other domestic issues. So I didn't get a chance to get that out. And then when David Oakes and his partners contacted me a month or so ago, asking if I would run for president again, I just said to them, "Do you have any idea how old I am?" And they said, "Yeah, we don't care. You know, what we want to do is get you into debates so that you can move the dialogue to the left." Well, that was persuasive, but not enough. And what I found out is they had done research extensively on me, and incidentally Tulsi Gabbard. And they felt that what I represented was what they represented or wanted to see represented in the debates. So I gave them, as a result of that, I gave them and said to go ahead, sure. And then I gave them access to my Twitter account, so they've been twittering statements by me. And it's interesting that a friend of mine called me and he said, "Gravel, God darn it, you sure are twittering a lot of great stuff." I says, "Well, I've not twittered a word. This is all these young kids who are familiar with my candidate, my record, and they're the ones that are running the show." And so the only caveat I have with them is that I could veto if they're doing something I just don't want to be associated with. And I did point out to them that negatives are not a very effective way of getting a message across. But you know, they have their shtick, and I honor that. But I just can't believe how well they've done. We have over 36 million hits on a website. 36 million. And then in addition to that, we have over $60,000 that's been contributed, basically from small contributors. And we have, I think, 60 or I think it's 120 volunteers who want to participate in the campaign to get me on the stage. Now, once on the stage, you've got to realize that you're not going to get at most 10 minutes. So you've really got to hone down your position of what you want to cover in an extreme kind of fashion. But then again, there'll be 12 debates. So you can, first debate, get one message out, next debate, get another message, and keep on going. But as you pointed out, Tulsi Gabbard and I are the only ones that really want to end the military-industrial complex. And of course, she and I both articulated a message about Assange, which is just horrible that they have arrested him and that he was put in a position to stay in the embassy for 7 years. Well, that's 7 years confinement in a room. I mean, it's one that you go nuts. And so, but he has done great service to the American public. It's interesting. I was just reading something who was opposing him and saying that isn't it terrible that he released information that was damaging to the United States. Well, of course, that's what should be released, is what's damaging to the United States, that we were murdering civilians in the area of Black Hawk Down. I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, I want to, I want to touch on a little bit about why, for you, eliminating and holding the military-industrial complex accountable is so important to you.
Well, because it has corrupted our entire civilization. And that's not too broad a brush either. Our entire civilization. You go to a basketball game or a football game, my God, you see the military culture out there up front, flags, the music. It's just, we're there to watch the game. We don't need another injection of patriotism. And that's not patriotism. Patriotism is where you really love your country and you're prepared to do something about it. And nobody's doing that at these games. So this is the whole culture of militarism that's been foisted on the people. And now what's really tragic is that there's no way you can change this. I don't care who gets elected president, you're going to see a continuation of the military-industrial complex. And even if I were elected, or Tulsi were elected president, we couldn't change it, because what it takes is a vote of Congress. And Congress and our government is sold out to the military-industrial complex, lock, stock, and barrel. It's been very cleverly designed. And that is that every congressional district in the United States has some part of a military contract being done in their state. So whenever a member raises his hand in opposing, you say, well, wait a second, Congressman, do you realize how many jobs are going to be lost in that area? And that the tragedy is that there will be jobs lost, but they don't have to be lost. Because what you can do is what Obama didn't do. Rather than bail out the banks, he should have bailed out the employees who had mortgages at stake. That's who he should have bailed out. And so if we're going to bail out anybody with the demise of the military-industrial complex, we got to begin to bail out the employees of these companies until these companies change their modus operandi to a product that's useful to society. We need a whole host of infrastructure done in the United States. And all of these companies, Grumman, GE, others, Boeing, they could concentrate on solving the infrastructure problems with the newest technology. None of this whole stuff of building a railroad. Build a maglev system right across this country to diminish the amount of airplanes traffic that we have polluting the skies. This is what we need to, and not only maglev, but the new technology with respect to healthcare. You could go on and on, but let me just share with you when Tulsi or let's say Bernie say we got to have healthcare for all. Oh, the conservatives say, where are you going to get the money? You're going to tax? I got to tell you, you don't have to raise 1 penny in taxes to pay for universal health care, single payer, and to pay for free tuition for all students, and to pay off the debt of all students. We don't have to raise 1 penny in taxes. Let me show you how. Right now, the Defense Department, the Pentagon, is spending $1.7 trillion, not billion, $trillion to refurbish our nuclear triad capability. Yep. Now, if you're taking cost overruns, what they're talking about is almost $3 trillion that they're going to be spending on this mother of boondoggles. And I say mother of boondoggles, ask yourself, do you think anybody is going to use these weapons? When you get the Joint Chiefs of Staff saying that this is our top priority and we need to have first strike capabilities to strike terror into the hearts of our potential opponents. Well, it doesn't get any sicker than that, because ask yourself, who's going to use these weapons? Because if you use a weapon that they're talking about, you're going to trigger a nuclear winter, and the whole planet will die. You and I will die. Now, this could be done in Pakistan against India, or India against Pakistan. You don't have to have retaliation, just the strike itself. Our strike against a potential enemy, Israel's strike against anybody that, and we could say, well, it's the leaders that control this. They don't control these things. It's lower echelons at the level of colonel, sometimes lieutenant colonel, that can make a decision to launch this attack. Here we have 12 nuclear Trident submarines. We have 10 on picket duty around in the oceans of the world. If any, and each one of those submarines has 280 warheads. 280 warheads on 20 missiles, 20 missiles, yeah, 20 missiles that are MIRVed. And so one nuclear submarine could hold the entire world hostage. Now, and you had a movie called Crimson Tide, which was based upon the actions of Vasily Arkhipov, the man that saved the world during the Cuban Missile Crisis. He literally saved the world. We don't know much of that story because, after all, he was an officer in the Soviet Union Navy, and so the fact that I'm alive today because of him. I'm alive, and so are you, and so is anybody else with the sound of my voice. Because had he not used his moral leadership to stop a captain from launching a nuclear torpedo, that's what saved the world and saved us. And so now we have the American military backed up by their crazy members in Congress, that we have to refurbish these nuclear devices, which incidentally is against the law. We signed a treaty that said that we would diminish our nuclear capability, not increase it. And so this increase started with Obama and is carried forward by Trump. And again, let me stress one thing. These weapons are not usable. We're spending $3 trillion on weapons that can't be used, because if they are used, they trigger a nuclear winter and the destruction of the planet. So that, in my mind, is a problem.
And you're saying, obviously, that $3 trillion, if it was put into infrastructure and green energy or whatever else, we could have healthcare, free college tuition, and green energy.
Very much so. And the Republicans in Congress under that idiot Mitch McConnell, he turned around and put the vote to everybody on the green energy. And so they voted unanimously. And shame on the Democrats who bought into that charade to embarrass Ocasio, Alexandria. And so that is the sanest thing we can do. There's only two things that are going to destroy the planet. One is going to be the climate change, and that's going to be a slow process. That could take 100 years to destroy the planet. I just articulated what can destroy the planet almost instantly with a nuclear trigger of a nuclear winter. That could happen at any time. You and I could be sitting here and all of a sudden we'll get a wave of radiation and we'll say, what the hell happened? Well, it was just India unloading on Pakistan.
Right.
Or Israel unloading on Iran. It's a sick world, and our leadership is party to this sickness.
So how do you see this? Because and going back to climate change, the UN has put out reports. I've read other studies that say it'll be a lot less than 100 years. The environment could completely collapse within 15 or 20 years or less. So
that's because of the methane coming out of the Arctic, where the permafrost is melting, and it has trapped so much methane that we're facing some serious problems. And I'm not sure whether we're at the tipping point within 12 years or we're at the tipping point within 10 years. Yeah, all I know is that we have to have a national commitment, a la the green energy deal that Ocasio-Cortez has promulgated in a mature, intelligent, serious fashion. And the Republicans who are trying to make fools of her are the fools. They're absolutely crazy as loons.
Well, so how do you see this? I mean, to me, it seems like this 2020 election might be one of the most important ones that we've ever had. How do you see who potentially could become the president and what they would have to do to reverse all of the things that you're talking about?
Well, first off, I hope that it's Bernie or Tulsi or Warren. Those are the ones I've identified that I think are viable and would try to do something meaningful. But that's all they could do is a little bit of meaningful stuff. Because in point of fact, that when you're electing a president, that's just one person. And there's a lot of hopes invested in that, like they were with Obama. And of course, everything went to hell in a handbasket with him in that regard. No, the answer is we have to change the fundamental structure of representative government. I have a book coming out this summer. It's going to be called Human Governance, the Failure of Representative Government, and a Solution, the People. And what I've advocated for the last 25 years is to create a legislature of the people where the people, in partnership with their elected officials, and mind you, the elected officials have a monopoly on lawmaking. Yeah. All the people can do is vote on election day for somebody that's been telling you what you want to hear, and get his hand out to Wall Street to pay for his message to you. So no, what we've got to do is to be, and I have in this book will outline in great detail how the people can conduct a national election unrelated to anything to do with the government, asking the people, because we have the technology to do this, asking the people, do you want to become a lawmaker? Do you want to see the creation of a citizens lawmaking, a legislature of the people? And if a sufficient number of people, let's say 80, 70 million, which is the majority of the people who voted in the last presidential election, when that majority votes for this election held outside of government, then it becomes the law of the land. And there's two parts of this package. One is an amendment to the Constitution, which this will take, and two, a federal statute that will outline in great detail how the procedures will be laid in place and serviced by a citizens' trust. The legislatures of the people will have detailed legislation on how to make laws, which is copied basically from what legislatures use as a device and what I've been able to study for the last 25 years. And so here's the answer. Somebody gets elected to president. It's favorable to creating a legislature of the people. We proceed to do that. And within a year and a half, we would have the people equipped. And we would have the people to ascend to this. This isn't just where top down. This is where we ask the people, do you want to become a lawmaker? Right now, all you can do is vote. And with voter oppression and the manipulation, that's a joke. It truly is. And so if you really want to change things, we have to have a legislature of the people and have to have key people in the Congress and in the presidency to then accommodate this new level of participation by the American public.
Right, because both parties control the primaries, which is really how they dictate who we have to vote for, and most of the politicians in both parties just take all this corporate money. And so that's, as Ralph Nader said, that's how you tell the difference between the two parties, is the speed with which they drop to their knees for their corporate benefactors.
Very well said. Very well said.
So, and then you're seeing, too, the Democratic Party is putting a lot of corporate centrist Democrats. It's still mind-blowing to me that Democrats and people who consider themselves just supporters of that party think that centrism is what is going to beat Trump, and that is mind-boggling to me.
Well, the problem is that, and this started with the Clintons, Bill Clinton, and of course during his administration, we repealed Glass-Steagall, which set up the situation in 08, 09. But what he did was to turn around and change welfare into a crueler process than the Republicans had designed it. And so what we have to do now is to be able to change what's happened, because what's happened is we've moved the center to the right, almost in the middle of the center to the right, far right. And so now when people say I'm a centrist, what they're saying is they're back to the far right because it's been moved. So what we need to now do, and that's of course what the kids that are managing my campaign want me to contribute to in a debate, is to move the center back to the center, so that when a person says I'm progressive, at least he's a centrist. You can be a centrist and be progressive. Now, I probably am considered far left, and that's probably accurate. But by the same token, there's nothing wrong with moving the process back. As the goalpost was moved back into the bleachers. Let's move the goalpost back to the center of the field where it belongs.
Well, yeah. I mean, FDR wrote a letter to the Democratic Convention ahead of the 1940 election saying, don't go to the right. The reason I'm running for my third term is because we have had all these left populist policies, and the Democratic Party has been inching itself to the right ever since, and it's mind-boggling to me. You're called far left in this country, and like Bernie Sanders, like free healthcare, free college tuition, those are centrist ideas in like many Western European countries.
They really are centrist. Bernie, if you define him by what his agenda is, he's a centrist. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is not rocket science. And I'm closer to a centrist than I am to the far left. I'm the far left because here, I feel that the 9/11 is an inside job. And people say, well, goddamn, Gravel's crazy. Inside job. Who would kill 3,000 Americans in what happened at the center? 3,000. Well, Congress kills 3,000 Americans wantonly. Yeah. That's what wars are all about. When you say, I want to go to war. So when you get a Bolton who wants us to attack Iran, what's Iran done to us? We're the ones that damaged them when in 1952, the first action of Dwight Eisenhower, and then most people don't realize this, the first action of Dwight Eisenhower 3 months into his presidency was to knock out Mossadegh, a duly elected person in Iran, and put in the Shah, a tyrant. This is the first thing that Eisenhower did for us. And of course, when he turns around and becomes a hero because he defined the military-industrial complex, he defined it at the end of his career. And he knew really what it was because the military-industrial complex was developed with Harry Truman and Dwight Eisenhower. When Eisenhower left office, we had 30,000 nuclear weapons. I mean, this is insanity. And we were pushing the Russians to get a similar amount. Yeah. This is insanity. 10, 20 of them would trigger us into a nuclear winter.
Right.
These people just don't know. And of course, am I really so far left when I'm saying that, hey, the nuclear capability that the Defense Department is asking for is a boondoggle. Why is it a boondoggle? Because the weapons can't be used. If the weapons were used, we're all dead. So is this sanity? Am I so far left when they say that Gravel wants to bring nuclear capability down to zero throughout the world? That's insanity?
Yeah.
Now, it's insanity for what we're doing in policy, regardless of that. Yeah, so, I just vent myself that people think I'm so extreme. I'm not extreme. I just use logic, and when it doesn't make sense, I don't want to do it. And so there's so much in our government policies that don't make sense. So the fact that I'm opposed to that puts me at an extreme. So, here, does it make sense to turn around and tried to demonize China and tried to demonize Russia. What have they done to us? Oh, you'll say, well, Russia went into the Crimea and took possession of Crimea. They had a plebiscite. The people voted to remain in Russia, and Crimea was given away arbitrarily by Khrushchev. But when do you not remember what's her name? The lady who was the Undersecretary of State, who said that what we ought to do is invade, or well, wait a second. What she did was she decided that the elected president of not Kiev, of Iran, not Iran. Oh God, help me a little bit on this one. The Kiev is the capital of Ukraine. So what she had a plan is to knock out the duly elected president of Ukraine. That was done by the United States. And so the reason why we did it is he was corrupt. Okay, so what's new with corruption in these countries? So she then put in office a person who had a couple, 3 or 4 Nazis that were defense secretaries who were deeply involved in that. Now, what their plan was to go into the Crimea, which of course they controlled at the time, and that was to begin to nibble at Sevastopol. Sevastopol is the largest military base under the Russian flag. And so Putin was smart enough to say, look, rather than go to war over Sevastopol, why don't we just take the insignias off of our military, send them out into the community, and ask them if they want to be Russian citizens again. And they said yes, and so he then took over the Crimea and then had a plebiscite, and people voted overwhelmingly to be part of Russia rather than part of the Ukraine. So now we turn around and sanction. We sanction Russia because of that. That was instigated by the Undersecretary of State under Hillary Clinton. Now, let me talk a minute about sanctions. Sanctions are another way of going to war. But who do you go to war against? Who do you think we're punishing in Venezuela with our sanctions? Do you think Maduro's missing a meal tonight?
Yeah. We're punishing the citizens.
Exactly. And the poorest of the citizens, because they're the ones that are hurt the most. And so whether it's sanctions against Russia, sanctions against China, and we can do all these sanctions because the dollar is the reserve currency of the world. But that's changing. That is going to change. And within a decade, we're not going to have the reserve currency. And then maybe other people will sanction us when they don't like what we're doing. So sanctions are, in my view, a criminal act of war that doesn't look like war, but it's war against the citizens of that country, not the leadership. And the theory that, well, we got to make the people hurt so they'll overthrow their leaders. Well, cite me a case in history where that's happened, and then I'll believe your theory.
Yes.
But right now, the theory is bogus, and the United States is the worst warmonger in the world against not only just going to war, actually, but in the subtle form of war against the populations, the people populations of the world.
Yeah, and we create more humanitarian crises and more atrocities, and and then we have the audacity to accuse some other nation, like, oh, Venezuela, they got people, the government is tear gassing them and they're eating out of the garbage cans. Well, that happens in this country. There's people living in the street in this country. The government and the military.
But we're causing that in Venezuela with our sanctions. Mm-hmm. So they try to blame the leaders. Well, the leaders are stuck. And the reason why they're strengthened is because they blame the real source, which is the United States. Right. So that empowers them. So if you want to get, let's take North Korea. If we would turn around and just end the Korean War, we're opposed to that. No, we can't end the Korean War because that's what the North Koreans want, and incidentally, that's what the South Koreans want also. Then the next thing, what does North Korea want to do? They want to do away with the sanctions so they can bring in prosperity, bring in trade. If you want to change these tyrannous governance, what you want to do is you want to empower the people economically. Look at what China's done. China's moved 600 million people from poverty to middle class. There is no society in human civilization with that level of accomplishment. And that's China. And now China, with their Belt and Road, which we oppose, all they're doing is going around the world and building roads, ports, highways, infrastructure, you name it, to raise the economic standard of living of the people in the world. They've done it in China. They're trying to repeat it as a model around the world. And we oppose this. We criticize, they're building these ports so they can take control of the people. Well, we build our military bases so we can take control of the people. So we're accusing them of what we're actually doing. And so, no, China's invited us repeatedly to join them in this program of raising the economic standard of the people of the world. And we're not involved. We're so busy building our military complex to threaten. That's what this whole nuclear deal is, as stated by the Joint Chiefs of Staff. We want to threaten them with horrific destruction. They need to know we have the will to do it. Can you imagine a military leader making that kind of statement in this country where we supposedly value moral judgment?
Yeah, we can't take the moral high ground. And but Senator Gravel, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today, and I applaud what you're doing of just trying to move the conversation to the left, from the centrist
to the middle. To the middle,
yeah,
because
to the middle.
it's to the far right. Let's move it to the middle, and Bernie will be, and Tulsi Gabbard will be part of the middle. I'll be a little bit to the left of the middle.
Right, because right now, I mean, these people who call themselves centrists, they're just
centrists. They're really over there to the right.
Yeah, they're just pro-choice Republicans. That's all they're doing. They're just.
That's right.
So where can people go? What's your website if they want to get more information on you or support your campaign?
That would be going to mikegravel.org, and that's run by these students. It's a senior in high school. It's the campaign manager, David Oaks. And all they're asking for is give $1, give $3. That will permit us to. Now, we've already qualified for 200 people from 20 states. So we've already met that qualification. So now what we need to do, and we're pushing about a third. We got over 20,000 people, so we need 45,000 people in order to qualify. So if people within the sound of my voice would go to mikegravel.org, that's not my personal site. This is the kids' site, and donate any amount modestly, and that will get the numbers up so that we can qualify by May 15th.
Awesome, guys. You heard it. Get them to 65,000 donors. All you can do is put $1 in there. MikeGravel.org. Senator Gravel, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. It was a great conversation.
Thank you very much. Very kind.
Thanks for watching.